the shattered urban sprawl of New Haven, a lone tactical officer was about to make her final stand. A routine sweep and clear operation turned deadly when elite shadow snipers initiated a synchronized attack from 3 elevated positions. Lieutenant Sarah Krell wasn't your typical tactical response officer. For 15 years, she was Delta Force's top counter-sniper specialist, known for extracting trapped units from tactically impossible situations during the Mars Colony Uprising of 2157. When the shadow snipers established their killing zone, they had no idea they were facing an expert in asymmetric warfare. Krell's systematic dismantling of their positions would trigger a revelation about a deeper conspiracy within military command. What began as a standard patrol would become a watershed moment in modern urban combat. The New Haven security zone would never be the same after the night Lieutenant Krell turned the hunters into the hunted. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Elite Squad, designated as Echo 7, consists of seasoned veterans who've survived countless operations across multiple combat zones. Their current mission, initially classified as a standard sweep and clear operation, has deteriorated into something far more complex. The team finds themselves pinned down in what military strategists would classify as a tactically impossible position, surrounded on 3 sides by enemy forces, with their backs against a sheer cliff face that drops hundreds of feet into a ravine. Lieutenant Sarah Krell, the squad's commanding officer, maintains her composure despite the dire circumstances. Her military record speaks of numerous successful extractions from compromised situations, but this scenario presents variables she's never encountered. Through her tactical visor, she observes multiple heat signatures moving in patterns that defy conventional combat doctrine. What makes these signatures particularly disturbing is their systematic approach, not the chaotic movements typical of guerrilla forces, but something more calculated and precise. The rest of Echo 7 maintains their defensive positions, their breathing steady despite the mounting tension. Years of training have taught them to control their fear, but there's an undercurrent of unease that even their extensive experience can't fully suppress. Their neural networks buzz with encrypted communications as they share tactical data, each member contributing to the collective awareness of their increasingly precarious situation. Krell's attention focuses on the unusual electromagnetic readings flooding her tactical display. The signatures don't match any known weapon systems or defense platforms in their extensive database. How could an enemy force deploy technology that hasn't appeared in any intelligence briefings? The question gnaws at her tactical assessment as she processes the information streaming through her neural interface. The squad's defensive position, while compromised, offers a unique vantage point for observing their opponent's movements. Through their advanced optical systems, they track the systematic way their adversaries are closing in, using cover and concealment with an efficiency that suggests something beyond standard military training. The precision of the enemy's movements indicates a level of coordination that surpasses human capabilities, raising alarming questions about exactly what they're facing. Communication with command remains frustratingly silent, suggesting their adversaries are employing sophisticated jamming technology. The squad's quantum-encrypted local network continues to function, allowing them to coordinate their defense, but the isolation from external support adds another layer of complexity to their predicament. Without the possibility of reinforcements or extraction, Krell must rely solely on the resources at hand and the capabilities of her team. The environmental conditions further complicate their tactical options. The air grows thicker with an unnatural haze that their filtering systems struggle to analyze. This atmospheric anomaly affects their visibility and interferes with certain scanning frequencies, forcing them to rely more heavily on their basic combat training than their advanced technology. What could be causing these environmental changes, and how does it relate to their mysterious opponents? As Krell processes these variables, she notices subtle patterns in the enemy's approach that seem to suggest an intelligence beyond mere tactical programming. The way they probe the squad's defenses demonstrates an adaptive strategy that learns from each interaction, becoming more efficient with each passing moment. This observation forces her to consider possibilities that challenge everything she knows about combat dynamics and enemy behavior. The squad's ammunition reserves remain adequate for a standard engagement, but their energy cells show concerning levels of depletion. Whatever field their opponents are generating appears to be drawing power from their systems at an accelerated rate. This development adds urgency to their need for a solution, as their advanced weapons and defensive systems may become compromised, if they can't find a way to counter this mysterious drain on their resources. Through her neural interface, Krell accesses archived combat data, searching for any historical precedents that might offer insights into their current situation. The database returns no matches for the combination of tactical patterns and technological signatures they're encountering. How can they effectively counter an enemy whose capabilities remain so thoroughly unknown? This question drives Krell's tactical analysis as she works to formulate a strategy that might give her squad a fighting chance. The tension builds as Echo 7's position becomes increasingly precarious. Their adversaries continue their methodical advance, each movement bringing them closer to the squad's defensive position. What started as a routine mission has evolved into something that could redefine their understanding of modern warfare. How will Krell and her team adapt to this unprecedented threat, and what revelations await them as they confront an enemy, unlike any they've faced before? The echoes of Krell's past reverberated through the confined space of their current predicament, a history as complex as the tactical situation they now faced. Lieutenant Sarah Krell's service record painted a picture of exceptional achievement, marred by controversial decisions, particularly during the Mars Colony Uprising of 2157. What began as a routine peacekeeping operation had escalated into one of the most scrutinized military interventions in recent history. During the uprising, Krell commanded the 45th Special Response Unit, tasked with protecting civilian infrastructure from insurgent attacks. The operation at Water Processing Plant 7 became the focal point of subsequent investigations and military tribunals. Faced with intelligence suggesting imminent sabotage of the facility's core systems, Krell made the call to initiate Protocol 23B, a contested containment measure that resulted in civilian casualties. Sergeant Elena Vasquez, now trapped alongside Krell in their current situation, had served as a junior officer during those events. The tension between them stemmed not from the decision itself, but from the aftermath. Vasquez had testified during the tribunal, providing crucial evidence that questioned the reliability of the intelligence Krell had acted upon. While the military court ultimately cleared Krell of wrongdoing, the relationship between the two officers never recovered. The intervening years saw both women rise through the ranks, their paths occasionally intersecting during joint operations. Each encounter carried the weight of unspoken accusations and unresolved conflicts. Vasquez's promotion to Field Operations Specialist brought her under Krell's direct command, a development that raised eyebrows among those familiar with their history. Their current mission had started routinely enough, a standard reconnaissance operation in the outer colonies. However, the discovery of unauthorized quantum signatures in Sector 7 had altered their objectives. The team's insertion went smoothly until the first signs of the trap became apparent. How had their opponents anticipated their arrival with such precision? The question hung heavy in the recycled air of their shelter. Krell's tactical decisions during the initial ambush demonstrated the same decisive leadership that had characterized her actions on Mars. Yet Vasquez's subtle challenges to these decisions revealed the persistent undercurrent of distrust. The squad's effectiveness hinged on resolving this tension, but could professional necessity overcome personal history? The psychological dynamics within the squad reflected broader questions about military leadership and accountability. When does decisive action cross the line into recklessness? How does past controversy affect current command authority? These questions became increasingly relevant as their tactical options dwindled. Intercepted communications suggested their opponents were well informed about the squad's capabilities and standard procedures. This level of intelligence pointed to a security breach, raising uncomfortable parallels to the disputed intelligence from the Mars incident. Krell's assessment of the situation drew on her experience, but Vasquez's expertise in counterintelligence offered alternative perspectives that couldn't be ignored. The technical challenges of their predicament required seamless coordination between Krell's strategic planning and Vasquez's specialized knowledge. Their forced collaboration highlighted both the strengths and weaknesses of their respective approaches. Krell's emphasis on rapid response conflicted with Vasquez's preference for thorough analysis, creating a dynamic tension in their decision-making process. Recent developments in quantum detection technology had rendered many traditional stealth approaches obsolete, requiring adaptations to established protocols. This technological evolution paralleled the changes in military doctrine since the Mars incident, changes that both Krell and Vasquez had helped shape through their subsequent careers. The squad's current position offered limited options for movement or communication. Each potential course of action carried significant risks, compelling Krell and Vasquez to find common ground despite their differences. Their shared responsibility for the squad's survival created an opportunity for reconciliation. But would professional necessity be enough to bridge the gap created by their history? As the situation evolved, the parallels between current circumstances and past events became increasingly apparent. The same factors that had led to controversy on Mars, limited intelligence, time pressure, and potential civilian casualties, now shaped their tactical choices. Would history repeat itself, or had both officers learned from past experiences? The next phase of operations would test not only their military capabilities, but also their ability to overcome personal conflicts in service of their mission. The squad's survival depended on finding a balance between Krell's decisive leadership and Vasquez's cautious expertise. Could they set aside their past differences before their opponents capitalized on this internal division? The first shots pierced the morning stillness, shattering any remaining illusions about a peaceful resolution. Lieutenant Krell and his team had anticipated resistance, but the precision and coordination of the sniper fire suggested they faced a more sophisticated opposition than initially assessed. From their position behind the warehouse's eastern wall, they could identify at least 3 distinct firing positions, each carefully chosen to maximize coverage of the surrounding area. What made the situation particularly concerning wasn't just the number of snipers, but their tactical positioning. These weren't amateur shooters taking potshots from convenient vantage points. The placement spoke of military training, with each position supporting the others in a classic triangulation pattern. Who had trained these operators, and how had they acquired such expertise? Sergeant Vasquez, despite her earlier tensions with Krell, demonstrated her tactical acumen by quickly identifying a potential blind spot in the sniper's coverage. The loading dock's overhead canopy, combined with the morning sun's position, created a shadow zone that could provide crucial moments of concealment. However, utilizing this advantage would require precise timing and coordination among team members. The team's communication system crackled with static-laden updates from their perimeter units. Reports indicated movement behind the warehouse, suggesting the snipers weren't working alone. The possibility of a larger force using the sniper fire as a distraction to maneuver into position added another layer of complexity to their already challenging situation. How many more hostile operators remained hidden, waiting for the right moment to strike? Technical Sergeant Chen's analysis of the bullet impacts revealed another troubling detail. The rounds weren't standard military or law enforcement ammunition, but custom-loaded cartridges designed for maximum accuracy at extended ranges. This level of preparation indicated significant resources and planning. The question wasn't just who they were facing, but who was funding and supplying them. The team's initial attempt to probe the snipers' positions yielded unexpected results. Instead of the anticipated suppressing fire, the snipers maintained strict fire discipline, only engaging when presented with clear shots at vital areas. This behavior pattern suggested they weren't merely trying to pin down Krell's team, but were executing a specific tactical objective. What was their true mission, and why were they willing to engage federal agents so openly? Lieutenant Krell's combat experience from previous operations provided valuable insight into the situation. The sniper's positioning and tactics bore striking similarities to techniques he'd encountered during joint operations with certain foreign special operations units. This recognition raised alarming questions about potential international connections to what was supposed to be a domestic investigation. The team's support unit reported unusual electromagnetic signatures in the area, indicating the possible presence of advanced communication equipment or surveillance systems. This technical sophistication, combined with the sniper's professional tactics, painted a picture of an adversary with significant resources and capabilities. How had such a well-equipped force established itself without triggering any previous intelligence warnings? Weather conditions added another variable to the tactical equation. The morning's clear skies were giving way to increasing cloud cover, which would affect visibility and potentially alter the sniper's effectiveness. However, these changes could also impact the team's planned countermeasures, requiring rapid adaptation of their strategy. Would the changing conditions provide an advantage or further complicate their response options? As Krell assessed their options, he noticed subtle patterns in the sniper's firing sequences. There appeared to be a coordinated rotation in their firing positions, suggesting they were operating under strict protocols to maintain continuous coverage while managing ammunition consumption. This level of discipline pointed to extensive training and experience in sustained operations. The situation demanded immediate action, but the complexity of the threat required careful consideration of multiple factors. Each potential course of action carried significant risks, and the consequences of a miscalculation could be severe. The team's position offered limited options for movement, while the snipers held the tactical advantage of elevated positions and prepared fields of fire. Analysis of available intelligence revealed gaps in their understanding of the opposition's capabilities and intentions. The presence of such a well-organized force suggested broader implications for their investigation. What connections existed between these operators and their original case? How had their targets acquired such professional military support? The idea. Pressure to develop an effective response mounted as the tactical situation continued to evolve. Each passing minute provided the opposition with opportunities to strengthen their position or bring additional resources into play. The team needed to act decisively while accounting for the numerous unknowns they faced. How could they turn the tables on an enemy that seemed to have every tactical advantage? The mounting pressure of sustained combat operations began taking its toll on Sergeant Dare's squad, manifesting in ways that even veteran soldiers found difficult to contain. What started as minor disagreements over tactical decisions evolved into deeper rifts, threatening the unit's cohesion at a time when unity was paramount for survival. Private Rodriguez's normally steady hands started showing subtle tremors during weapon maintenance, while Corporal Chen's typically precise communication became increasingly terse and laden with tension. These small but significant changes didn't escape Dare's notice, who recognized them as warning signs of combat stress reaching critical levels. How long could a squad maintain peak performance under such relentless pressure? The psychological weight of their situation intensified when ammunition counts started running lower than comfortable levels. Each soldier knew the exact number of rounds remaining in their magazines, and that knowledge became a constant source of anxiety. Standard operating procedures dictated conservative fire rates, but the persistent threat of sniper fire meant every movement required suppressing fire, forcing an impossible choice between safety and conservation. Sleep deprivation compounded these issues, with watch rotations becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. The squad's designated rest periods were frequently interrupted by sporadic enemy fire, preventing the deep sleep necessary for mental recovery. Medical supplies, while still adequate, showed visible depletion. Each bandage used represented one less available for future engagements. The deteriorating situation forced Dare to confront a leadership challenge that went beyond tactical decisions. The traditional methods of maintaining morale, humor, shared hardship, and focused mission objectives began losing effectiveness against the grinding reality of their circumstances. When Specialist Thompson missed an obvious signal during a routine patrol rotation, it became clear that standard protocols were no longer sufficient. Internal conflicts that would normally resolve themselves through usual military discipline started requiring direct intervention. The squad's designated marksman, Private First Class Martinez, engaged in an unprecedented argument with the team's radio operator over frequency monitoring protocols, a dispute that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. These incidents forced DARE to spend valuable time mediating internal disputes rather than focusing on external threats. Communication with higher command became another source of friction. The squad's requests for additional support or strategic clarification met with increasingly delayed responses, suggesting larger organizational challenges beyond their immediate tactical situation. This communication gap left DARE in the difficult position of maintaining confidence in the mission, while privately harboring growing doubts about their strategic position. The physical environment, once a familiar operational theater, transformed into a source of constant stress. Every window represented a potential sniper position, every alley a possible ambush point. The squad's movements became increasingly hesitant, with each patrol requiring more time and energy to maintain the same level of security. What impact would this heightened caution have on their ability to complete essential missions? Equipment maintenance suffered as fatigue set in, with weapons cleaning sessions becoming shorter and less thorough. The squad's vehicles, critical for both mobility and protection, showed signs of wear that would typically warrant immediate attention. However, the constant need for readiness meant that comprehensive maintenance became a luxury they couldn't afford. The breaking point manifested differently for each squad member. For some, it appeared as unusual silence during typically social moments. Others displayed it through excessive attention to minor details, obsessing over equipment arrangements that had never bothered them before. These individual stress responses created a ripple effect throughout the unit, with each person's coping mechanism potentially triggering or amplifying another's anxiety. Leadership challenges escalated as DARE attempted to balance the need for tactical effectiveness with the human limitations of his squad. Traditional military doctrine provided clear guidelines for combat operations, but offered less guidance for managing a unit on the brink of psychological exhaustion. How could he maintain military discipline while acknowledging the very real human cost of their sustained deployment? The situation forced a re-evaluation of mission priorities. Tasks that once seemed straightforward now required careful consideration of the squad's diminished capabilities. Each new order from command had to be filtered through the lens of what the squad could realistically accomplish in their current state, creating additional stress for DARE as he balanced mission requirements against the welfare of his soldiers. These compounding factors created a leadership environment where traditional solutions proved increasingly inadequate. The question wasn't simply how to accomplish the mission, but how to prevent the complete breakdown of unit effectiveness while maintaining some semblance of military order. What options remained when conventional leadership approaches failed to address the deepening crisis? The truth behind Spectre's identity emerged through a series of carefully orchestrated events that had been years in the making. Intelligence. Reports, previously classified documents, and encrypted communications gradually revealed that Spectre operated as a high-ranking operative within the syndicate, maintaining deep ties to both criminal enterprises and legitimate military operations. This complex web of connections explained how the mysterious figure had consistently stayed one step ahead of Task Force 141. The most startling revelation came through recovered data fragments showing Spectre's direct involvement in Captain Krell's final mission 15 years ago. The operation, originally classified as a standard counterterrorism deployment, actually served as an elaborate setup orchestrated by Spectre to eliminate potential threats to their growing influence within military intelligence circles. Krell's team had unknowingly stumbled upon evidence linking several high-ranking officials to weapons trafficking operations in the region. What made the connection particularly significant was how Spectre had manipulated both sides of the conflict. Communications logs showed regular contact between Spectre and Krell's superiors in the months leading up to the fatal mission, suggesting a deliberate effort to position Krell's team in vulnerable situations. Simultaneously, Spectre maintained control over local insurgent groups, directing their movements to ensure maximum impact against coalition forces. The psychological impact of these revelations on Task Force 141 proved substantial. How many other operations had been compromised by Spectre's influence? The question loomed large as team members reassessed past missions, searching for patterns they might have missed. The ghost they'd been chasing had been present in their operations far longer than anyone had suspected, manipulating events from within the very system designed to stop them. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Financial records unveiled a sophisticated network of shell companies and offshore accounts linking Spectre to numerous military contractors. These connections provided access to classified information, advanced equipment, and tactical data that should have remained secure. The level of infiltration suggested years of careful planning and positioning, raising serious concerns about the integrity of military intelligence systems. Technical analysis of Spectre's communication methods revealed an innovative approach to avoiding detection. Rather than relying on traditional encrypted channels, they utilized a system of fragmented messages distributed across multiple legitimate military networks. This technique allowed them to hide critical information in plain sight, disguised as routine military correspondence. The sophistication of this system explained why previous attempts to track Spectre's activities had failed. The connection between Spectre and Krell extended beyond the fatal mission. Evidence suggested that Krell had been investigating anomalies in mission parameters months before his death, documenting discrepancies that only made sense in light of the recent revelations. His personal notes, recovered from archived data, showed growing suspicion about certain operation details, though he never identified Spectre specifically. Forensic analysis of Krell's final mission revealed careful manipulation of intelligence, reports, and support systems. Critical communications were delayed, surveillance data was altered, and backup resources were redirected through seemingly legitimate channels. The precision of these manipulations indicated intimate knowledge of military protocols and systems, further confirming Spectre's position within the military hierarchy. The impact of these discoveries forced a fundamental reassessment of Task Force 141's operational security. Traditional verification protocols proved insufficient against an adversary with such deep access to military systems. The team needed to develop new methods of securing communications and verifying intelligence, knowing that conventional channels might be compromised. The revelation of Spectre's identity and methods created a ripple effect throughout military intelligence communities. Other units began reporting similar patterns in failed operations, suggesting Spectre's influence extended far beyond Task Force 141's encounters. This broader perspective helped establish a more complete picture of their adversaries' capabilities and reach. Questions about Spectre's ultimate objectives remained unanswered. While their tactical goals and specific operations became clear, the strategic purpose behind years of manipulation remained elusive. Understanding these long-term objectives became crucial for predicting Spectre's next moves and preventing further infiltration of military systems. The Ghost's game had been played with remarkable patience and precision, using military resources against themselves while maintaining plausible deniability. This realization forced Task Force 141 to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their greatest threat came not from external forces, but from within the very systems they relied upon for survival. The identification of Spectre marked a crucial turning point in the ongoing conflict, but knowledge alone couldn't neutralize the immediate threat posed by the sniper positions scattered throughout New Haven. The Resistance fighters faced a critical question. How could they effectively counter an enemy that had maintained tactical superiority through carefully chosen vantage points? The answer emerged through meticulous planning and reconnaissance. Intelligence gathered by the Resistance network indicated that the snipers operated on a rotating schedule, with specific patterns of movement between their designated positions. This information, combined with detailed architectural surveys of New Haven's buildings, provided the foundation for the Resistance's first coordinated counter-offensive against the snipers. Lieutenant Sarah Krell, a former military tactical specialist, developed the initial strike plan. Her strategy centered on exploiting the brief windows during shift changes when the snipers were most vulnerable. The Resistance fighters divided into 3 specialized teams: a distraction unit, an infiltration group, and a support team responsible for covering their withdrawal. The first target selected was a sniper nest located in the former telecommunications building, chosen specifically because it controlled access to the main medical district. This position had prevented crucial medical supplies from reaching the civilian population, resulting in numerous preventable deaths. The resistance recognized that neutralizing this location would not only provide tactical advantages, but also deliver a powerful symbolic victory. The operation commenced during the pre-dawn hours, utilizing the cover of darkness and the scheduled rotation of sniper teams. The distraction unit initiated their phase by triggering a series of controlled explosions in the industrial sector, drawing attention away from the telecommunications building. This diversionary tactic exploited Krell's standardized response protocols, which required a minimum number of observers to maintain surveillance on any significant disturbance. As predicted, the sniper team divided their attention, creating a vulnerability in their defensive position. The infiltration team, led by Marcus Rodriguez, utilized this opening to access the building through a maintenance tunnel that had been overlooked in Krell's security sweeps. Their approach remained undetected due to the careful timing of their movement with the ambient noise of the city's power grid. The success of the operation hinged on precise coordination between the teams. The support team monitored Krell's communication channels, providing real-time intelligence about enemy movements and response patterns. This information allowed the infiltration team to adjust their approach as needed, avoiding patrol routes and security checkpoints. When the infiltration team reached the sniper's position, they encountered an unexpected advantage. The shift change had begun, catching both the departing and arriving sniper teams in a momentary lapse of readiness. The resistance fighters neutralized the threat without casualties on either side, securing not only the position, but also valuable tactical equipment and communication devices. The acquisition of the sniper's equipment proved particularly significant, as it provided the resistance with insight into Krell's targeting systems and communication protocols. The captured technology revealed vulnerabilities in their enemy's coordination methods, suggesting potential weaknesses in other sniper positions throughout the city. This successful operation demonstrated that Krell's control over New Haven wasn't as absolute as previously believed. The resistance had proven that careful planning, precise execution, and coordinated teamwork could overcome even well-established enemy positions. However, this victory also raised new questions. How would Krell adapt their strategies in response to this loss? What changes would they implement in their remaining sniper positions? The Resistance's success provided more than just tactical advantages. It delivered a psychological boost to the civilian population who had lived under the constant threat of sniper fire. The elimination of this particular position allowed medical supplies to flow more freely through the medical district, directly improving the lives of New Haven's residents. The operation also revealed the effectiveness of the Resistance's intelligence network. The accurate information about shift changes, patrol patterns, and building access points highlighted the importance of civilian cooperation in their struggle against Krell's occupation. This realization led to increased efforts to strengthen connections with the civilian population, recognizing that their support was crucial for future operations. As the resistance fighters consolidated their position and analyzed the captured equipment, they began planning their next moves. The success of this operation provided a template for future actions against other sniper positions, but they understood that each subsequent strike would need to be uniquely adapted. Krell would be expecting similar tactics, requiring the resistance to continue evolving their strategies. What began as a single successful operation against one sniper position evolved into a broader strategic advantage. The resistance had demonstrated their capability to challenge Krell's control over New Haven, but how would they maintain this momentum? Could they replicate this success against other positions before Krell adapted their defenses? The successful elimination of the enemy sniper position marked a significant turning point in the operation, but it also drew unwanted attention to the squad's location. Within minutes of confirming their kill, multiple enemy units began converging on their position, forcing them to reassess their tactical situation rapidly. Radio communications from command indicated that at least 3 enemy platoons had mobilized in response to the sniper elimination. The squad's position, initially chosen for its strategic advantage, now became increasingly untenable as hostile forces approached from multiple vectors. What had started as a precision operation was evolving into a potential encirclement scenario. The squad leader's decision-making process focused on three critical factors: the rapidly diminishing ammunition supplies, the likelihood of enemy reinforcements, and the deteriorating weather conditions that could affect their extraction options. How long could they maintain their position before the situation became critical? The answer came sooner than expected when the first volleys of enemy fire struck their position. The initial enemy contact came from the northwest, with small arms fire targeting their perimeter. The squad responded with controlled bursts, maintaining fire discipline despite the mounting pressure. However, the sound of approaching vehicles from the east signaled a significant escalation in the enemy's response. The squad's position, while defensible against infantry, offered limited protection against mechanized units. Communication with headquarters revealed that immediate air support was unavailable due to the weather conditions and ongoing operations in adjacent sectors. The squad needed to implement their contingency plans quickly. The primary extraction route, previously designated during the mission planning phase, was now compromised by enemy movement patterns. This development forced the squad to consider their secondary and tertiary evacuation routes. The squad's medical officer reported their supplies were sufficient for emergency treatment, but not sustained combat operations. 2 team members had sustained minor injuries during the initial engagement, and while these weren't life-threatening, they could impact the unit's mobility during a withdrawal. The question wasn't whether to retreat, but how to execute it effectively, while maintaining unit cohesion and minimizing exposure to enemy fire. Implementing their retreat required precise coordination. The squad divided into 2 fire teams, with one providing covering fire while the other moved to subsequent positions. This leapfrogging technique allowed them to maintain tactical integrity while gradually disengaging from the enemy. Each movement had to be carefully timed to avoid creating vulnerabilities that the enemy could exploit. The terrain presented both challenges and opportunities during the withdrawal. Dense vegetation provided concealment but limited visibility and movement speed. The squad utilized natural depressions and elevation changes to break enemy line of sight, reducing their exposure to direct fire. However, this careful movement came at the cost of time, and the enemy forces continued their advance. Enemy fire increased in intensity as they detected the squad's withdrawal. The sound of mortar rounds impacting nearby positions indicated that the opposing forces had brought up additional support weapons. The squad's retreat now had to account for both direct fire and the threat of indirect fire missions. How would they maintain their withdrawal tempo while avoiding predictable movement patterns that could make them vulnerable to mortar fire? The squad's communication specialist maintained constant contact with headquarters, providing regular updates on their position and movement. This communication proved crucial, as it allowed command to coordinate potential support options and update the squad on enemy movement patterns detected by other surveillance assets. The information flow helped the squad adjust their retreat route in real time, avoiding areas where enemy forces were concentrating. Weather conditions continued to deteriorate, with visibility reducing significantly. While this complicated navigation and movement, it also provided additional concealment from enemy observation. The squad relied on their night vision equipment and pre-planned waypoints to maintain their direction of movement. The reduced visibility also appeared to impact the enemy's ability to coordinate their pursuit effectively. The squad's equipment load presented another challenge during the retreat. While they had already expended significant ammunition, reducing their carry weight, they still needed to transport their specialized equipment and remaining supplies. Every piece of equipment had to be evaluated for its necessity versus the mobility cost it imposed. Critical mission equipment could not be abandoned, but non-essential items were cached or discarded to increase movement speed. As the squad approached their designated rally point, the intensity of enemy fire began to decrease. The combination of weather conditions, difficult terrain, and the squad's disciplined withdrawal appeared to have frustrated the enemy's pursuit efforts. However, the squad maintained their tactical awareness, knowing that complacency during a retreat could be fatal. What other challenges awaited them at their rally point, and how would they secure their position once they arrived? The success of their tactical retreat would be measured not just by their ability to break contact with the enemy, but also by their capability to maintain unit effectiveness for subsequent operations. The squad's experience demonstrated that a well-executed withdrawal could be as crucial to mission success as any offensive action. Their ability to adapt to changing circumstances and maintain discipline under pressure had turned a potentially dangerous situation into a textbook example of tactical retreat procedures. The discovery of the tunnel network beneath the contested urban terrain marked a significant tactical shift in the ongoing operation. What initially appeared as a simple basement access point revealed itself as an extensive underground system, presenting both strategic opportunities and potential hazards for the squad. The entrance, partially concealed behind debris from earlier bombardments, led to a concrete reinforced passage that branched into multiple directions. The tunnels, constructed decades ago as part of the city's civil defense infrastructure, maintained their structural integrity despite years of neglect. Their existence raised critical questions about enemy movement patterns and explained how opposing forces had managed to appear and disappear with surprising efficiency during previous engagements. Initial reconnaissance revealed 3 primary tunnel branches: north, leading toward the commercial district; east, extending under the residential zones; and west, connecting to the industrial sector. The passages measured approximately 2 meters in height and varied between 1 and 2 meters in width, with periodic wider sections that served as storage or gathering spaces. Electrical conduits ran along the ceiling, though most remained inactive, forcing the squad to rely on their tactical lights for visibility. The air quality deteriorated progressively deeper into the network, with humidity levels increasing and ventilation becoming more restricted. Communication equipment experienced intermittent interference, necessitating the establishment of relay points to maintain contact with command elements above ground. How had the enemy adapted to these conditions, and what modifications had they implemented to sustain extended underground operations? Evidence of recent activity appeared throughout the tunnel system. Discarded supply containers, temporary rest areas, and tactical markers suggested regular use by opposing forces. The discovery of communication equipment and power generation systems indicated the tunnels served as more than mere transit routes. They functioned as a parallel operational infrastructure beneath the city streets. The network's strategic value became increasingly apparent as the squad documented junction points and access locations. These tunnels provided covered movement across significant portions of the urban battlefield, bypassing surface-level obstacles and observation points. Each vertical access shaft represented a potential entry or exit point, though many had been carefully concealed or deliberately blocked to channel movement through controlled areas. Technical assessment of the tunnel system revealed sophisticated engineering considerations. Drainage systems prevented flooding, while reinforced sections protected against structural collapse from surface explosions. The original civil defense planners had incorporated multiple escape routes and emergency exits, though many now served different tactical purposes than initially intended. The discovery of supply caches at regular intervals demonstrated the enemy's logistical adaptation to underground warfare. Medical supplies, ammunition, and communication equipment had been positioned strategically throughout the network, suggesting a well-organized system of underground resupply and support. What level of coordination was required to maintain such an elaborate subsurface operation? Mapping efforts revealed the tunnel's integration with existing urban infrastructure, connections to utility systems, maintenance tunnels, and basement levels of major buildings created a complex 3-dimensional battlefield environment. This underground dimension added significant complexity to tactical planning and required immediate adjustment of operational parameters. The presence of improvised modifications throughout the tunnel system indicated ongoing adaptation by various forces. Newly constructed side passages, reinforced positions, and observation posts demonstrated how the original infrastructure had been repurposed for current military operations. These alterations provided insights into enemy tactics and capabilities, while presenting potential vulnerabilities for exploitation. Environmental challenges within the tunnel network intensified as exploration continued. Limited visibility Restricted maneuver space and acoustic properties that distorted sound created unique tactical considerations. The squad's equipment and training, primarily oriented toward surface operations, required immediate adaptation to these subterranean conditions. The tunnel network's discovery fundamentally altered the operational understanding of the urban battlespace. Traditional surface-level tactics and procedures required significant modification to account for this underground dimension. How would this new knowledge impact future operations, and what additional capabilities would be needed to effectively operate in this environment? Assessment of the tunnel system's defensive and offensive potential became a priority. Each junction, chamber, and access point presented tactical opportunities while simultaneously introducing vulnerabilities that required careful consideration. The underground network transformed from a simple discovery into a critical component of the operational environment that demanded immediate integration into strategic planning. The revelation of Krell's past failure emerged during a tense confrontation with Vasquez in the dimly lit tunnels beneath the colony. The discovery of classified military documents within the underground network had triggered memories of a similar incident from 15 years ago, when Krell served as a security officer on Europa Station. Vasquez, drawing from her extensive background in colonial security operations, recognized patterns in Krell's behavior that matched reports from the Europa incident. The failure had resulted in the loss of 37 colonists during a containment breach, a fact that had been carefully buried in redacted files, but never completely erased from official records. What made the Europa incident particularly relevant was its striking similarity to their current situation. Both cases involved underground facilities, unexplained security breaches, and a mounting death toll. The parallel circumstances raised critical questions about Krell's ability to handle the present crisis. How could someone with such a catastrophic failure in their past be trusted to lead them through another, potentially devastating situation? Krell's initial response to Vasquez's confrontation was measured but defensive. His military training manifested in his rigid posture and carefully chosen words, explaining that the Europa incident had shaped his approach to security protocols. The failure had led to significant reforms in colonial emergency procedures, though this provided little comfort to those who had lost family members in the disaster. The tension between Vasquez and Krell reflected a deeper issue within the group's dynamics. Trust, already fragile in their desperate circumstances, threatened to shatter completely as more details of Krell's past emerged. The other survivors, overhearing the confrontation, began to question whether their faith in Krell's leadership had been misplaced. Could someone who had failed to protect others in the past be relied upon to ensure their survival now? The documentation Vasquez had discovered revealed that Krell had made a critical error in judgment during the Europa crisis. Rather than following standard evacuation protocols, he had attempted an experimental containment procedure that ultimately failed, sealing the fate of those trapped inside the compromised section. The decision, while made with the intention of saving more lives, had resulted in unnecessary casualties. Krell's explanation of his actions that day offered insight into the complexity of crisis management in isolated colonial environments. The experimental procedure he had attempted was designed to prevent the spread of a biological contaminant, which, if released, could have potentially affected the entire station's population of over 3,000 people. His choice, while ultimately tragic, stemmed from a utilitarian calculation that haunted him still. The confrontation forced the group to grapple with difficult questions about leadership and accountability. When does past failure disqualify someone from current responsibility? How does one balance experience gained from mistakes against the weight of their consequences? These questions became increasingly relevant as their own situation grew more precarious. Vasquez's military background provided her with unique insight into the psychological impact of command decisions. Her own experiences had taught her that leadership often required making impossible choices under extreme pressure. However, she argued that Krell's failure to disclose his past involvement in such a similar incident represented a breach of trust that could not be ignored. The revelation created ripples of doubt throughout the survivor group. Some began to question every decision Krell had made since the crisis began. Others wondered if his past experience, though tragic, might actually make him better equipped to handle their current situation. The division threatened to fragment their already tenuous unity at a time when cohesion was crucial for survival. The documentation also revealed that Krell had undergone extensive psychological evaluation and additional training following the Europa incident. His subsequent record showed exemplary service, with multiple commendations for crisis management in other colonial operations. This information added another layer of complexity to the group's assessment of his capability and trustworthiness. The confrontation between Vasquez and Krell represented more than a simple disagreement about past events. It highlighted the challenges of maintaining group cohesion under extreme stress and the importance of transparency and leadership. As the survivors faced mounting threats within the tunnel network, could they afford to let trust issues undermine their chances of survival? The timing of this revelation proved particularly problematic, as the group faced immediate decisions about their next moves within the tunnel system. Each choice could mean the difference between survival and disaster, and the shadow of Krell's past failure now colored every option they considered. Would the weight of this knowledge affect their ability to make clear-headed decisions in crucial moments? The aftermath of combat leaves indelible marks on those who survive. But for military medics, the weight of responsibility carries an additional burden. How does one reconcile professional duty with personal anguish when a life slips away under their care? Corporal Sarah Patch knelt beside the makeshift medical station, her hands trembling as she methodically cleaned her medical instruments. The metallic scent of blood lingered in the air, a stark reminder of the soldier she couldn't save. Private Torres had arrived with multiple shrapnel wounds, his vital signs already critically low. Despite Patch's best efforts, implementing every procedure she'd learned and utilizing all available resources, Torres's injuries proved too severe. The loss hit particularly hard because Torres had been one of the newer recruits who'd always shown genuine interest in learning basic field medicine from her. During quiet moments between missions, he would ask questions about different techniques and procedures, displaying an earnest desire to help others. His death represented more than just the loss of a fellow soldier. It marked the failure of Patch's fundamental purpose as a combat medic. Medical training had prepared Patch for the technical aspects of treating combat injuries, but no amount of simulation could fully replicate the emotional toll of losing a patient. The rational part of her mind understood that some wounds were simply beyond saving, yet the question of what she could have done differently played on repeat in her thoughts. Would a different approach to treating the arterial bleeding have bought more time? Should she have prioritized the chest wound over the leg injury? Lieutenant Chen noticed Patch's distress and approached the medical station. As the squad's commanding officer, Chen had witnessed numerous soldiers grappling with similar struggles. Rather than offering immediate consolation, Chen simply sat nearby, allowing Patch the space to process her emotions while maintaining a supportive presence. The relationship between medical personnel and their patients in combat zones develops unique characteristics that civilian healthcare providers rarely experience. Combat medics live, train, and fight alongside the soldiers they treat, creating bonds that transcend traditional doctor-patient dynamics. When loss occurs, it strikes at both professional and personal levels, challenging the medic's ability to maintain the emotional distance necessary for effective care. Patch's training emphasized the importance of compartmentalization, the ability to separate emotional responses from medical duties. This skill proves essential during active treatment, but becomes increasingly difficult to maintain in the quiet moments following a loss. The human mind seeks to make sense of tragedy, often leading to self-doubt and questioning of one's abilities, regardless of the actual circumstances. The military's standard operating procedures required Patch to complete a detailed report of the incident, documenting every treatment decision and outcome. While designed as an administrative necessity, this process forced her to relive each moment of Torres's final minutes. The clinical language of the report stood in stark contrast to the raw emotions she experienced, creating a disconnection between professional obligation and personal grief. Other squad members observed Patch's struggle, recognizing the unique burden carried by their medical personnel. Several soldiers shared their own experiences of loss, not to minimize her pain, but to demonstrate understanding and support. This collective acknowledgement of grief served as a reminder that in military units, individual struggles often find resolution through shared experiences and mutual support. The challenge for combat medics lies not only in processing personal grief but in maintaining the confidence necessary to continue performing their duties effectively. How does one move forward after such a loss while remaining prepared for the next emergency? The answer often emerges through a combination of professional resilience and the support of fellow service members. As darkness settled over the base, Patch finally completed her report and reorganized her medical supplies. Each item she inventoried carried memories of previous treatments, both successful and unsuccessful. These tangible reminders of her role served as anchors, grounding her in the practical aspects of her duties while processing the emotional impact of loss. The military's emphasis on readiness meant that Patch couldn't afford extended periods of reflection. Future missions would require her full attention and capabilities, demanding that she find ways to carry this experience without being paralyzed by it. This balance between acknowledging loss and maintaining operational effectiveness represents one of the most challenging aspects of military medical service. What separates effective combat medics from others isn't their ability to avoid feeling loss, but rather their capacity to integrate these experiences into their professional growth while maintaining their commitment to saving lives. How will Patch's experience with Torres influence her future approaches to critical care? What lessons might emerge from this loss that could help save others in similar situations? The weight of responsibility bore down on Dare's shoulders as she positioned herself behind her rifle, a familiar companion that suddenly felt foreign in her trembling hands. The recent loss of the wounded soldier under Patch's care had sent ripples through the entire unit. But for Dare, it manifested as an unprecedented crisis of confidence. How could someone who had always relied on precision and certainty navigate through the fog of self-doubt? As the team's designated sharpshooter, Dare's role demanded unwavering focus and split-second decision-making. Her previous missions had earned her a reputation for exceptional marksmanship, with a success rate that had become legendary among the ranks. Yet the events of the past few days had shaken her foundation, forcing her to question every calculation, every breath, and every squeeze of the trigger. The psychological impact of combat began manifesting in subtle ways during routine training exercises. Dare's typically steady hands developed an almost imperceptible tremor, noticeable only to her trained eye through the scope. Her breathing patterns, once perfectly regulated, became erratic at crucial moments. The milliseconds of hesitation before taking a shot stretched longer, and her mind raced through countless variables that had never troubled her before. Fellow squad members noticed the change in their usually confident sharpshooter. The precise movements and fluid grace that had characterized Dare's operations gave way to mechanical, second-guessed actions. During team briefings, her typically incisive tactical input became tentative, laden with qualifiers and uncertainties. The sharp edge that had defined her expertise seemed to dull with each passing day. The source of Dare's doubt traced back to a fundamental question that haunted her. Could precision and certainty exist in a world where even the most skilled medic couldn't save a life? The mathematical certainty of ballistics and trajectory calculations that had been her anchor now seemed inadequate against the chaos of warfare. What good was a perfect shot if the ultimate outcome remained beyond control? Training sessions became a battlefield of their own as Dare struggled to reconcile her technical knowledge with her emotional turmoil. Each missed target amplified her anxiety, creating a feedback loop of diminishing performance. The metrics that had once validated her expertise now served as stark reminders of her perceived decline. How could she maintain her critical role when every decision felt weighted with unprecedented consequences? The psychological burden extended beyond the shooting range. Dare found herself analyzing past missions with newfound scrutiny, questioning decisions that had once seemed clear-cut. The clean lines between right and wrong, success and failure, blurred into a complex gradient of possibilities and what-ifs. Could different choices have led to different outcomes? Would future decisions carry unforeseen repercussions? Leadership noticed the change in their key assets' performance. While some advocated for temporary relief from duty, others recognized the dangerous precedent it might set. The battlefield offered no luxury of self-doubt, and Dare's struggle represented a crucial junction. Would she overcome this crisis, or would it define her future capability as a sharpshooter? The technical aspects of her role remained unchanged. The physics of projectile motion, the influence of environmental factors, the importance of timing. Yet Dare found herself grappling with the human element that no amount of training could fully prepare for. The intersection of precision and uncertainty became a paradox she couldn't resolve through calculations alone. Support from fellow squad members came in various forms, though many struggled to understand the depth of her crisis. Some offered practical advice, focusing on technique and fundamentals. Others shared their own experiences with doubt and resilience. Yet the path to rebuilding confidence proved uniquely personal, requiring Dare to confront her transformed perspective on combat effectiveness. The pressure to maintain operational readiness added another layer of complexity to Dare's situation. Military operations couldn't pause for personal crises, and the team's reliance on her specialized skills remained unchanged. How long could she navigate this internal struggle before it compromised mission security? What were the implications? Of a sharpshooter who second-guessed every trigger pull? The intersection of professional expertise and emotional resilience emerged as the central challenge in Dare's journey. Could she integrate her newfound awareness of warfare's uncertainties with the precision her role demanded? The answer would determine not only her future effectiveness, but also her ability to adapt to the complex realities of modern combat. The mounting pressure of sniper fire had created an untenable situation for the Helian forces, with their best marksmen experiencing an unprecedented crisis of confidence. How could a single tactical problem threaten to unravel their entire defensive position? The answer lay in the psychological warfare being waged from the shadows, but Krell recognized that every problem, no matter how complex, had a solution. Krell gathered his senior officers in the reinforced command bunker, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of tactical displays. The constant impacts of enemy fire created a rhythmic backdrop to their strategic discussion. Analysis of the sniper attacks revealed a pattern. The enemy marksmen were operating in coordinated pairs, using sophisticated triangulation techniques to maximize their effectiveness while minimizing their exposure. The traditional counter-sniper tactics had proven ineffective against these well-trained adversaries. Their ability to relocate swiftly after each shot and maintain constant pressure on the Helian forces demanded an unconventional response. What if the solution wasn't to outshoot them, but to outthink them? Krell's strategy centered on exploiting the very precision that made the enemy snipers so deadly. Their need for clear lines of sight and stable firing positions limited their potential locations. By mapping these optimal positions and understanding their interdependencies, Krell identified critical nodes where the snipers would be forced to operate. The plan called for a carefully orchestrated series of movements designed to manipulate the sniper's behavior. Small teams would create deliberate gaps in the defensive line, appearing as tempting targets while actually serving as bait. These gaps would funnel the snipers toward pre-selected positions where Helian forces could spring their trap. Implementing this strategy required precise coordination and timing. Krell assigned specific roles to each unit, emphasizing the importance of maintaining the illusion of vulnerability while actually strengthening their overall position. The risk was significant. Any miscalculation could expose their forces to devastating fire. The technical aspects of the plan demanded innovative use of their limited resources. Engineering teams began modifying defensive positions to include false targets and sensor-equipped decoys. These modifications would serve dual purposes: gathering intelligence on sniper positions while providing convincing bait for their trap. Communication protocols underwent rapid revision to support the new strategy. Traditional radio channels were supplemented with visual signals and prearranged movements, reducing the risk of enemy interception. How could they ensure perfect synchronization across multiple units while maintaining operational security? The medical teams prepared for potential casualties, establishing covered evacuation routes and forward aid stations. The plan's success depended on maintaining the appearance of normal defensive operations while secretly repositioning key assets. Every detail had to be considered, from the angle of protective barriers to the timing of shift changes. Krell's attention turned to the psychological aspects of the operation. The enemy snipers had demonstrated exceptional patience and discipline, traits that could be turned against them. By understanding their training and tactical doctrine, Krell identified potential behavioral patterns that could be exploited. The question of timing became crucial. When should they spring the trap? Too early, and the enemy might detect the deception. Too late, and they risked losing more personnel to sniper fire. The window of opportunity would be narrow, requiring split-second decision-making from field commanders. Training for the operation began immediately, with units practicing their roles in secured areas away from enemy observation. The complexity of the plan demanded perfect execution. Each element had to move precisely on schedule while maintaining the appearance of routine defensive operations. Supply lines were reorganized to support the new tactical configuration. Additional ammunition and medical supplies were quietly distributed to key positions, disguised as normal resupply operations. How long could they maintain this elaborate deception before the enemy detected something amiss? The final element of Krell's plan addressed the crisis of confidence affecting their own sharpshooter. Rather than relying solely on counter-sniper operations, the strategy incorporated multiple layers of support and redundancy. This approach would reduce the pressure on any single marksman while maximizing the effectiveness of their combined capabilities. As preparations continued, Krell monitored the enemy's reactions closely. Any change in their pattern could indicate they detected the trap, requiring immediate adjustments to the plan. The success of the operation hinged on maintaining the initiative while appearing to react to enemy pressure. With each passing hour, the pieces of Krell's strategy fell into place. The question remained, would this elaborate plan be enough to counter the deadly efficiency of the enemy snipers? The answer would soon become apparent, as the trap was set and the final preparations were made for its execution. The execution of Krell's counter-sniper strategy commenced in the pre-dawn hours, when darkness still cloaked the ruined cityscape. The operation relied heavily on precise timing and coordination between multiple teams, each playing a crucial role in what would become a deadly game of deception. 3 separate units moved into position, maintaining strict radio silence to avoid detection by the enemy's surveillance systems. The first team, led by Sergeant Chen, established a series of automated decoy positions using thermal generators and motion simulators. These devices, typically used for training exercises, now served a more lethal purpose, creating false heat signatures and movement patterns that mimicked human activity. The second team, under Lieutenant Rivera's command, deployed a network of micro-drones equipped with specialized software designed to track muzzle flashes and calculate trajectory paths. These autonomous units, no larger than a human palm, positioned themselves at strategic intervals throughout the sector, their sensors primed to detect the minute atmospheric disturbances caused by sniper fire. What made this operation particularly challenging was the need to maintain absolute authenticity in the deception. The enemy snipers had demonstrated remarkable ability to distinguish between genuine targets and decoys in previous encounters. How would they respond to this new level of technological sophistication? The third team, commanded by Krell himself, consisted of the unit's most skilled marksmen. They moved methodically through the underground maintenance tunnels, using the city's infrastructure to approach their designated positions without exposing themselves. The success of the operation hinged on their ability to remain undetected until the precise moment of engagement. As the operation progressed, the complexity of the urban environment presented both advantages and obstacles. The damaged buildings created countless potential firing positions, but they also generated unpredictable wind patterns that could affect ballistic calculations. The remnants of civilian infrastructure, broken water mains, exposed power lines, and unstable structures, added additional variables to an already intricate tactical equation. The deployment of decoy positions followed a carefully calculated pattern designed to appear random to enemy observers. Each thermal generator was calibrated to produce heat signatures that matched the biological patterns of human bodies, including subtle variations that would occur during different activities. The motion simulators created movement patterns based on actual combat behavior data, making them nearly indistinguishable from real soldiers. Lieutenant Rivera's drone network represented the operation's technological edge. The microdrones utilized advanced algorithms to process data in real time, creating a three-dimensional map of potential sniper positions based on environmental factors and historical engagement patterns. Could this digital web detect the enemy before they realized they were being hunted? The operation's timing coincided with a period of reduced visibility caused by atmospheric conditions, a factor that Krell had specifically waited for. The combination of low light and increased particulate matter in the air would complicate the enemy sniper's ability to verify their targets while providing additional cover for the counter-sniper teams. As the first phase of the operation unfolded, the tension among the teams was palpable. Years of combat experience had taught them that the initial moments of any counter-sniper operation were critical. The enemy had consistently demonstrated their ability to adapt to new tactics, raising the stakes for this elaborate deception. The automated systems began generating their false signatures, creating a digital tapestry of deception across the sector. Each decoy position was programmed with specific behavioral patterns that would appear legitimate to enemy observers. The challenge lay in maintaining the illusion long enough to draw out the snipers while keeping the actual counter-sniper teams concealed. The micro-drone network activated in stages, their sensors beginning to collect and process data about the operational environment. These devices represented a significant investment of resources, but their potential to provide real-time targeting information made them essential to the operation's success. Would the enemy's own surveillance systems detect these tiny observers? Krell's team maintained their positions in the underground network, monitoring the operation's progress through secure data feeds. The success of their mission would depend on perfect timing. Moving too soon would alert the enemy, while waiting too long could allow them to detect the deception. The question remained: how would the enemy snipers respond to this elaborate trap? The operation's first phase marked a departure from conventional counter-sniper tactics. Instead of reacting to enemy fire, they were attempting to control the battlefield through technological deception. The effectiveness of this strategy would soon be tested, as the enemy snipers would inevitably begin their daily hunt for targets. Would they recognize the trap before it was too late? The revelation of an enemy leader's identity often serves as a pivotal moment in any conflict, fundamentally altering the dynamics of engagement and forcing a reassessment of previously held assumptions. In this instance, the emergence of the true identity behind the opposing forces sent ripples through the defensive ranks, challenging established strategies and raising questions about the nature of the threat they faced. Intelligence reports began filtering through command channels, piecing together fragments of information that had previously seemed disconnected. Communications intercepts, surveillance data, and field observations coalesced into a pattern that pointed to a single, unexpected source. The leader's identity, when finally confirmed, carried implications that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Historical records revealed a complex background that helped explain the sophisticated nature of the enemy's operations. The individual had extensive military experience, coupled with deep knowledge of internal defense protocols, a combination that explained their ability to anticipate and counter standard response measures. This expertise manifested in the precision of their attacks and the strategic placement of their forces, demonstrating an intimate understanding of defensive vulnerabilities. What made the revelation particularly significant was the leader's former position within allied organizations. Their transition from trusted insider to adversary raised troubling questions about potential compromised information and the extent of their knowledge of critical systems. How many other sleeper agents might remain undetected? What classified information had been extracted during their tenure? The psychological impact of this discovery reverberated through the ranks. Personnel who had worked alongside the individual, struggled to reconcile their previous interactions with the current reality. This internal turmoil threatened to undermine unit cohesion at a critical juncture, requiring immediate attention from command staff to maintain operational effectiveness. Forensic analysis of recent enemy operations revealed subtle signatures that, in retrospect, should have identified the leader earlier. Their tactical preferences, command style, and strategic approaches aligned with their known historical patterns. These indicators had been overlooked, masked by the chaos of ongoing operations and the assumption that the threat originated from external sources. The leader's expertise in psychological warfare became evident in their manipulation of information channels. They had skillfully exploited existing tensions and vulnerabilities, using their insider knowledge to maximize the impact of their operations. Their understanding of organizational dynamics allowed them to target key pressure points, creating cascading effects that amplified the damage of each strike. Technical systems required immediate security overhauls as the extent of potential compromised access became clear. Emergency protocols activated across multiple facilities, triggering a comprehensive review of all systems the leader might have accessed. The process of identifying and closing security gaps while maintaining operational capability presented a significant challenge. The pattern of recent attacks took on new significance when viewed through the lens of the leader's identity. Their choice of targets, timing of operations, and methods of execution reflected a deep understanding of internal procedures and response capabilities. This knowledge had allowed them to stay one step ahead, anticipating and countering defensive measures before they could be fully implemented. Investigation into their background revealed a carefully constructed facade that had masked their true allegiances for years. Their rise through the ranks had been methodical, each position providing access to increasingly sensitive information and systems. The thoroughness of their preparation raised questions about long-term planning and possible external support. The leader's current operational base remained elusive, protected by layers of deception and misdirection, learned during their time in Allied service. Their knowledge of surveillance capabilities and counterintelligence measures made traditional tracking methods ineffective, requiring the development of new approaches to locate and neutralize their command structure. Analysis of their communication patterns revealed a sophisticated network of intermediaries and cutouts, making it difficult to trace orders to their source. The leader's understanding of signals intelligence allowed them to maintain operational control while minimizing their digital footprint. How had they managed to establish such an extensive shadow network without detection? The revelation of the leader's identity transformed the nature of the conflict, shifting it from a conventional military engagement to a complex counterintelligence operation. Their ability to operate within existing security frameworks while simultaneously undermining them presented a unique challenge that required a fundamental reassessment of defensive strategies. The task of countering their operations now required a delicate balance between addressing immediate threats and implementing long-term security measures. The process of identifying and neutralizing their support network while preventing further infiltration demanded resources and attention at a time when both were already stretched thin. What other surprises might this shadow figure have prepared? How deep did their influence extend into current operations? The revelation of the enemy leader's identity sent shockwaves through the Tactical Operations Center. But there was little time to process this information as the mission parameters shifted dramatically. The squad found themselves in an increasingly precarious position, with enemy forces converging from multiple vectors and their extraction window rapidly closing. Patch, the team's veteran combat medic, recognized the deteriorating situation before anyone else. Years of battlefield experience had honed his ability to read tactical scenarios, and the current circumstances triggered an immediate response in his analytical mind. The squad's position, while defensible, would soon become untenable as enemy reinforcements continued to arrive in overwhelming numbers. The tactical display showed 3 primary assault vectors, each one presenting a unique challenge to the squad's survival. The northern approach offered the enemy significant cover, while the eastern corridor provided them with elevated firing positions. The western route, though more exposed, allowed the hostile forces to funnel additional troops into the area with minimal resistance. Patch's medical training had taught him to prioritize threats and his combat experience helped him calculate survival probabilities with clinical precision. The squad's ammunition reserves were depleting rapidly, and 2 team members had sustained injuries that compromised their mobility. Without decisive action, the entire unit faced imminent danger. The veteran medic's communication device crackled, with urgent updates from command, confirming what he already suspected. The extraction helicopter could not approach under the current level of enemy fire. The anti-aircraft positions needed to be neutralized, but any direct assault would likely result in catastrophic casualties for the squad. What Patch identified was a narrow window of opportunity that required perfect timing and unflinching resolve. The enemy's command and control structure revealed a vulnerability. Their communications hub was coordinating the multi-pronged assault. If this hub could be disabled, it would create sufficient chaos to allow the squad to reach the extraction point. The solution presented itself with cruel clarity. Someone would need to breach enemy lines alone and destroy the communications hub. The mission would be virtually unsurvivable, but it offered the only realistic chance for the squad's survival. How many times had Patch made similar calculations while triaging battlefield casualties? Without announcing his intentions, Patch began redistributing his medical supplies to other team members. His movements were methodical and purposeful, each action part of a carefully considered plan. He transferred critical supplies, spare ammunition, and essential equipment to his squad mates under the guise of standard tactical reorganization. The team's focus remained on defending their position, unaware that their medic was preparing for his final mission. Patch's decision crystallized as he observed his younger teammates, some barely out of training, others with families waiting at home. His own family would understand. They always had. Service and sacrifice were concepts deeply embedded in their shared history. Patch's preparation accelerated as enemy fire intensified. He calculated the optimal route through enemy lines, identifying paths that would maximize his chances of reaching the objective. The communications hub lay 400 meters beyond their position, requiring him to traverse exposed terrain and breach at least 2 enemy defensive lines. The veteran medic's movements drew the attention of the squad leader, who recognized the telltale signs of preparation for independent action. Their eyes met briefly, decades of shared combat experience allowing for silent communication. The squad leader understood immediately and gave an imperceptible nod, both acknowledging the necessity and accepting the cost. Patch initiated his mission during a momentary lull in enemy fire, using the brief reduction in hostile activity to slip away from the squad's position. His movement was deliberate and precise, leveraging every available piece of cover. Years of battlefield experience guided his path selection, each step calculated to minimize exposure while maintaining momentum toward the objective. The enemy's first defensive line presented an immediate challenge, but Patch's approach remained measured and tactical. He employed a combination of distraction techniques and precise timing to exploit gaps in their security coverage. His progress, while methodical, steadily brought him closer to the communications hub. As Patch penetrated deeper into enemy territory, his actions began to draw attention away from the squad's position. Enemy units diverted to intercept this new threat, inadvertently creating the very disruption he had intended. The tactical dynamics shifted as hostile forces adjusted their deployment to address this unexpected development. The veteran medic's advance continued with unwavering determination. Each meter gained, bringing him closer to his objective, while simultaneously improving his squad's chances for survival. His final approach to the communications hub would require perfect execution, timing, and an element of luck that often proved decisive in combat operations. What thoughts occupied Patch's mind as he moved toward his objective? Did he reflect on past missions, on the lives he had saved, or on the family that would receive news of his final service? These questions would remain unanswered, but his actions would speak volumes about his character and commitment to his fellow soldiers. The elimination of the second sniper position marked a critical turning point in the squad's mission, fundamentally altering the tactical landscape they faced. Following Patch's sacrificial maneuver that saved his teammates, the remaining operators maintained their forward momentum, channeling their emotional response into calculated precision. The second sniper nest, positioned in an elevated structure, approximately 300 meters from their location, had been providing overlapping fields of fire with the first position. This tactical setup had effectively created a deadly crossfire zone, but with the first position neutralized, the enemy sniper team had lost their coordinated advantage. This vulnerability became apparent as they attempted to compensate by increasing their rate of fire, inadvertently revealing subtle details about their position. Lieutenant Chen identified the telltale signs of an amateur adjustment in the sniper's technique, a common error when teams lose their supporting element. The increased frequency of shots indicated panic, a departure from the measured and patient approach typical of experienced marksmen. What would drive a trained sniper to abandon fundamental principles of their craft? The squad utilized this tactical error, implementing a three-point suppression strategy that had been refined through countless training exercises. While two team members maintained steady suppressing fire, forcing the sniper to remain in a defensive posture, the third member executed a carefully planned flanking maneuver. This textbook execution of small unit tactics demonstrated why the squad had earned their reputation for operational excellence. Communications intercepts during this phase revealed increasing disorder within the enemy ranks. The loss of their first sniper position had created a ripple effect through their command structure, leading to conflicting orders and degraded coordination. The intercepted radio traffic suggested that the enemy had not anticipated such a rapid and effective response to their ambush positions. The breakthrough came when the squad identified a previously unnoticed maintenance access route that provided covered approach to the sniper's blind spot. This discovery proved crucial, as it allowed them to exploit a fundamental weakness in the enemy's defensive setup. Who would have thought that such a small oversight in the opposition's planning would lead to such a decisive advantage? The neutralization operation itself was executed with surgical precision. The squad's coordinated effort eliminated the threat, without causing collateral damage to the surrounding infrastructure, an important consideration given the sensitive nature of their mission parameters. The success of this operation validated their extensive training in urban warfare tactics and their ability to adapt standard procedures to unique battlefield conditions. Analysis of the captured position revealed valuable intelligence about the enemy's broader defensive strategy. Documents and equipment found at the site indicated a larger coordinated effort to establish multiple hardened positions throughout the area. This intelligence proved invaluable for subsequent operational planning and highlighted the importance of thorough post-action reconnaissance. The technical sophistication of the enemy's equipment raised important questions about their supply chain and support network. The presence of advanced optical systems and communication gear suggested access to military-grade resources, contradicting initial intelligence assessments. How had they acquired such equipment, and what did this indicate about their organizational capabilities? The successful neutralization of the second sniper position created a tactical opportunity that the squad could exploit. With both overwatch positions eliminated, the enemy's defensive network showed signs of strain. Communication intercepts indicated increasing confusion among their ranks as they struggled to adapt to the rapidly changing situation. The operation's success also provided valuable insights into enemy tactics and procedures. The detailed analysis of their setup, equipment, and response patterns offered crucial information for updating counter-sniper protocols. This real-world validation of theoretical tactics would prove invaluable for future operations and training programs. The breakthrough achieved by eliminating the second sniper position represented more than just a tactical victory. It demonstrated the squad's ability to maintain operational effectiveness even after losing a team member, showcasing their professional resilience and adaptive capabilities. Their performance under these challenging conditions validated years of intensive training and preparation. The implications of this success extended beyond the immediate tactical situation. The elimination of both sniper positions fundamentally altered the battlefield dynamics, creating new opportunities for advancement, while simultaneously forcing the enemy to abandon their carefully planned defensive strategy. What would their next move be? and how would they attempt to compensate for the loss of their overwatch positions. This phase of the operation highlighted the critical importance of maintaining tactical flexibility while adhering to fundamental principles of small unit operations. The squad's ability to balance these sometimes competing requirements proved essential to their success, setting the stage for the next phase of their mission. The systematic elimination of enemy positions had brought the squad closer to their ultimate objective, yet the most challenging obstacle remained ahead. The final sniper, positioned in what intelligence suggested was a fortified location, represented not just a tactical threat, but the culmination of their mission. How would the team approach this last critical engagement? The squad's advance through the urban terrain followed a methodical pattern, utilizing the lessons learned from their previous encounters. Each member maintained precise spacing, their movements synchronized through years of training and recent combat experience. The final position lay ahead in a partially collapsed structure that offered the enemy sniper multiple firing angles and escape routes. Communications between team members remained minimal, relying instead on hand signals and pre-planned protocols. Their earlier successes had provided valuable intelligence about the enemy's tactics, revealing a pattern of behavior that suggested this final position would be the most sophisticated of the three. The question of whether the enemy had adapted to their approach lingered in every calculated step. The structural analysis of the target building indicated multiple challenges. The collapsed sections created natural defensive positions, while the remaining intact floors provided elevated firing positions that could cover multiple approaches. This complexity demanded a different strategy than the previous engagements. The team needed to account for the possibility that the enemy had prepared secondary and tertiary positions within the same structure. Technical data from their support elements indicated unusual heat signatures within the building, suggesting the presence of additional security measures. The team's approach incorporated this intelligence, adjusting their formation to address potential automated defense systems or remote-triggered devices. What other surprises had the enemy prepared for this final confrontation? The squad's movement patterns shifted to accommodate the unique architectural challenges of the target structure. Their advance incorporated irregular intervals, designed to disrupt any pre-calculated firing solutions the enemy might have prepared. The team's experience with the previous two positions had revealed the enemy's preference for specific angles and timing patterns, information that now proved invaluable. Equipment checks became more frequent as the squad closed in on their objective. Each team member verified their specialized gear, knowing that this final engagement would likely require every tool at their disposal. The integration of their individual capabilities would prove crucial in the approaching confrontation. How would their combined skills overcome this last defensive position? The tactical dynamics of the situation demanded continuous adjustment. The team's formation evolved as they processed new environmental data, each member automatically compensating for changes in cover and line of sight. Their approach maintained constant pressure on the target, while minimizing exposure to potential counterattacks. Support elements provided real-time updates on environmental conditions and structural integrity assessments. This information flow allowed the squad to identify optimal breach points and potential weaknesses in the enemy's defensive setup. The integration of this data into their tactical approach represented a crucial advantage over their adversary. The psychological aspect of the operation intensified as they neared their objective. The elimination of the previous two positions had likely altered the final defender's tactical calculations. The team's approach accounted for increased desperation and potentially more aggressive defensive measures. What desperate tactics might they encounter in these final moments? Their advance incorporated lessons from urban warfare doctrine, adapted to their specific situation. The team's movements exploited blind spots in the building's defensive layout, using architectural features to mask their approach. Each step brought them closer to their objective while maintaining maximum tactical advantage. The squad's coordination reflected their extensive training and combat experience. Individual movements complemented team objectives, creating a seamless, tactical approach that maximized their offensive capabilities while maintaining defensive integrity. Their formation adapted to changing conditions without compromising their overall strategic position. As they reached their final approach positions, the team initiated their breach preparation protocols. Each member assumed their designated role, ready to execute their part in the carefully planned assault. The culmination of their mission hung on these critical moments. How would their preparation and experience translate into action in this final confrontation? The integration of their individual specialties would prove crucial in the approaching engagement. Each team member's unique capabilities contributed to a comprehensive tactical solution, designed to overcome the sophisticated defenses they anticipated. Their collective expertise represented the culmination of years of training and combat experience, focused on this decisive moment. The psychological battle between Krell and Spectre intensified as they reached the final stages of their deadly encounter. With the last sniper cornered, both operators understood that traditional combat tactics would no longer suffice. The situation had evolved into a complex mental chess match, where each participant attempted to anticipate and counter their opponent's next move. Krell, drawing from years of counterterrorism experience, recognized the telltale signs of a trained professional in his adversary's positioning. The sniper had chosen an optimal location that offered multiple escape routes while maintaining clear lines of sight, a hallmark of extensive tactical training. What made this opponent particularly dangerous was their ability to remain calm under pressure, suggesting military or special operations background. The psychological dynamics shifted as Spectre implemented advanced counter-sniper protocols, systematically eliminating the target's options while maintaining their own tactical advantage. The methodical approach served a dual purpose. It restricted the sniper's movement while simultaneously projecting an aura of inevitable capture. This psychological pressure often proved more effective than direct confrontation, as it forced targets to make mistakes under duress. Communication between squad members took on new significance during this phase. Using hand signals and encrypted, short-range communications, they coordinated their movements with minimal risk of alerting their quarry. The silent coordination demonstrated the team's professional cohesion, but it also served to increase the psychological isolation of their target. How long could someone maintain composure while surrounded by an unseen but ever-present threat? The environment itself became a weapon in this mental warfare. Every shadow, every subtle movement of air, and every distant sound carried potential significance. The sniper's training would compel them to analyze each sensory input, creating a mounting cognitive load that would eventually take its toll. Would they crack under the pressure, or would they find a way to turn these environmental factors to their advantage? Krell's expertise in psychological operations came to the forefront as he implemented subtle audio deception techniques. The carefully timed deployment of sonic distraction devices created uncertainty about the team's true position and numbers. This uncertainty formed the cornerstone of their strategy. A target questioning their own situational awareness became increasingly vulnerable to tactical exploitation. The passage of time played a crucial role in this mental battle. Each minute increased the psychological strain on both parties, but particularly on the isolated sniper. Professional training could mitigate this stress to some extent, but no amount of preparation could completely eliminate the mental toll of being hunted. The question remained, who would break first under this sustained pressure? Spectre's reputation for psychological warfare preceded them, having broken numerous high-value targets through mental manipulation rather than direct force. Their approach typically involved creating an overwhelming sense of inevitability. The certainty that capture or neutralization was only a matter of time. How would this methodology fare against an equally trained opponent? The tactical situation evolved into a battle of perception management. Each side attempted to project strength while concealing vulnerabilities, creating a complex layer of bluff and counter-bluff. The success of these psychological operations often hinged on subtle details: the timing of movements, the pattern of communications, and the strategic use of silence. As the psychological pressure mounted, both sides engaged in a delicate balance of action and restraint. Too much aggression could force a premature confrontation, while too much patience might allow the target to formulate an effective counter-strategy. This balance required constant adjustment based on the target's responses and environmental conditions. The mental strain began manifesting in physical symptoms among squad members: increased heart rates, heightened alertness, and subtle changes in breathing patterns. These physiological responses required careful management to maintain operational effectiveness. Could the team maintain their psychological advantage while managing their own stress responses? The integration of technology into psychological warfare added another dimension to the encounter. Thermal imaging, motion sensors, and other advanced surveillance equipment provided data that could be used to manipulate the target's perception of their tactical situation. However, the psychological impact of this technology worked both ways. The knowledge that one was being monitored by superior equipment could either break or strengthen an opponent's resolve. The true measure of warfare extends beyond tactical advantages and strategic victories, manifesting in the irreplaceable loss of human life. As the squad pushed forward in their final assault against Krell's forces, the weight of sacrifice became increasingly apparent with each passing moment. The operation began with methodical precision, yet the enemy's desperate resistance proved more formidable than anticipated. Lieutenant Sarah Krell, who had served alongside the squad since their earliest missions, fell first. Her final act of courage involved drawing enemy fire away from a group of civilians seeking shelter, a decision that saved dozens but cost her everything. How many more would pay the ultimate price before this conflict reached its conclusion? The squad's medic, James Morrison, worked tirelessly to treat the mounting casualties, his supplies dwindling as quickly as his energy. His hands, steady through countless procedures, began to shake as he moved from one wounded soldier to another. The stark reality of combat medicine became evident. Not everyone could be saved, and the choices of whom to treat first carried their own brutal consequences. Private Rodriguez, the youngest member of the squad, demonstrated extraordinary valor when their position came under heavy fire. His quick thinking and decisive action prevented an enemy flanking maneuver, but the cost was severe. The injuries he sustained would end his military career, adding him to the growing list of those whose futures were irrevocably altered by the conflict. Communications specialist Lisa Wong maintained crucial battlefield coordination despite the chaos, her voice remaining steady, even as she relayed news of fallen comrades. Her efficiency saved countless lives, yet each casualty report she transmitted carried a piece of her resolve away. What toll does it take to remain professional while announcing the deaths of those you've served alongside? The squad's heavy weapons expert, Marcus Thompson, held a crucial choke point for hours, preventing enemy reinforcements from overwhelming their position. His unwavering dedication came at a physical price. The continuous recoil of his weapon left lasting damage to his shoulder and hearing. These invisible wounds, like so many others, would persist long after the battle concluded. Captain Reynolds faced the burden of command with stoic determination, knowing each order could mean life or death for those under his leadership. The responsibility of sending soldiers into harm's way weighed heavily, particularly as the casualty reports continued to mount. His decisions, though tactically sound, carried human costs that would haunt him in the years to come. The support teams working behind the lines faced their own challenges. Medical evacuation pilots risked everything to extract the wounded, often flying through heavy fire. Ground crews worked exhaustively to maintain equipment and supply lines, knowing that any failure on their part could result in more casualties at the front. As the operation progressed, the psychological impact became increasingly evident. Veterans who had maintained their composure through countless engagements began showing signs of strain. The constant exposure to loss and violence created invisible wounds that would require their own form of healing. How does one measure the mental toll of watching friends and colleagues fall in battle? The squad's advance continued despite the mounting losses, each meter of ground gained marked by sacrifice. The terrain itself seemed to extract payment in blood, with seemingly secure positions becoming deadly traps. Urban combat proved particularly costly, with enemies hiding in rubble and improvised explosive devices claiming lives indiscriminately. The support personnel faced their own forms of loss. Intelligence officers who had worked closely with now-fallen operatives struggled with guilt over information that proved incomplete or inaccurate. Logistics specialists mourned the loss of convoy drivers they had come to know through regular supply runs. Even the drone operators physically removed from the battlefield carried the weight of watching casualties occur in real time through their monitors. As the operation reached its critical phase, the cumulative effect of these losses began to manifest in subtle ways. Veterans instinctively stepped up to protect newer recruits, often at their own expense. Soldiers who had lost close friends fought with a mixture of determination and desperation, their tactical decisions influenced by personal grief. What drives humans to continue fighting even in the face of such devastating loss? The cost extended beyond the immediate battlefield. Families back home waited anxiously for news, some receiving the dreaded visit that would forever change their lives. Communities prepared to welcome back those who would return different from when they left, changed by experiences that civilians could never fully understand. The ripple effects of combat casualties reached far beyond the tactical reports and official statistics. How does a military unit maintain its effectiveness while absorbing such significant losses? The answer lay in the resilience of those who remained, their determination to honor fallen comrades by completing the mission, and their unwavering support for one another. Yet this resilience came with its own price, as each soldier carried the weight of survival while others did not. The culmination of warfare often hinges on singular moments where individual choices ripple through the fabric of history. How does one measure the weight of redemption against the backdrop of devastating conflict? In the chaos of the final push, Dare found himself positioned at a crucial vantage point overlooking the main battleground. His specialized training as a marksman, combined with years of combat experience, provided him with a unique perspective on the unfolding situation. The heavy casualties sustained by the squad in their advance had left scattered groups fighting independently, creating a fragmented front line that threatened to collapse under enemy pressure. Through his scope, Dare observed the tactical disadvantage his fellow soldiers faced. The enemy had established multiple firing positions, effectively pinning down the remaining squad members and preventing any coordinated movement. The situation demanded immediate action, yet the complexity of the battlefield made conventional approaches nearly impossible. What could one soldier accomplish against such overwhelming odds? Dare's past decisions had often been questioned by his teammates, his tendency to prioritize mission objectives over squad safety creating friction within the unit. These moments of doubt and criticism had built up over time, forming a barrier between him and his fellow soldiers. However, the current crisis presented an opportunity that transcended personal history and individual concerns. The veteran marksman began a methodical analysis of the battlefield, identifying key enemy positions and calculating the risks associated with various courses of action. His training emphasized the importance of patience in critical situations, but the rapidly deteriorating condition of the squad's position demanded swift intervention. The question of timing became paramount. When should precision give way to necessary action? Dare initiated a series of calculated movements along the elevated terrain, using natural cover to maintain concealment while repositioning for better firing angles. Each adjustment brought new tactical possibilities into view, along with increased exposure to enemy fire. The risk to his position grew with every meter gained, yet the potential impact of his actions continued to outweigh personal safety concerns. The first shot taken by Dare eliminated an enemy gunner who had been preventing the squad's medical team from reaching wounded soldiers. This initial success created a brief window of opportunity for casualty evacuation, though it also drew immediate attention to his position. Enemy forces began redirecting their fire, forcing Dare to maintain constant movement while continuing his support of ground operations. Through precise application of his marksmanship skills, Dare systematically dismantled the enemy's tactical advantage. Each carefully placed shot disrupted their defensive structure, creating gaps that the squad could exploit. The psychological impact of his accuracy forced enemy units to abandon advantageous positions, reducing their effectiveness and allowing squad elements to advance. The turning point arrived when Dare identified the enemy's command and control center, cleverly disguised within what appeared to be a standard defensive position. This discovery presented a critical opportunity to significantly impact the battle's outcome. But reaching an effective firing position would require leaving all available cover. Would the potential strategic gain justify such extreme personal risk? In a decisive moment, Dare abandoned his relatively secure position and moved to an exposed vantage point that offered a clear line of sight to the enemy command center. This action drew concentrated fire from multiple directions, but it also provided the angle needed for a crucial shot. The success of this single action could potentially shift the entire battle's momentum. Despite sustaining injuries during his repositioning, Dare maintained the focus necessary to execute the critical shot. The elimination of the enemy's command structure created immediate confusion within their ranks, allowing squad elements to capitalize on the disorder and push forward. The tactical advantage gained through this action proved instrumental in the battle's ultimate outcome. The impact of Dare's intervention extended beyond the immediate tactical success. His willingness to place himself at risk for the benefit of the squad demonstrated a profound shift in priorities, marking a transformation from his previous approach to combat operations. The choice to prioritize team survival over personal safety represented a fundamental change in his operational philosophy. The cost of this transformation came at a significant physical toll, as Dare sustained multiple wounds during his exposed position. However, his actions had created the breakthrough needed for the squad to achieve their objectives. The success of the mission, coupled with the preservation of numerous squad members' lives, established a new context for evaluating his contribution to the unit. Through this sequence of events, Dare's redemptive moment emerged not from a single dramatic action, but from a series of calculated decisions that prioritized the squad's survival over individual concerns. The culmination of these choices demonstrated a deeper understanding of unit cohesion and the true meaning of tactical success. How does one measure the value of such transformation against the backdrop of combat's harsh realities? The culmination of years of conflict between humanity and the Spectres reached its apex in what would later be known as the terminal confrontation. After Dare's pivotal role in turning the tide of battle, the remaining human forces converged on the central nexus where the primary Spectre consciousness had established its stronghold. The question that haunted every soldier's mind was whether humanity had finally gained enough understanding of their ethereal enemies to strike a decisive blow. The Spectre consciousness, unlike its subordinate units, possessed an intelligence that transcended conventional human comprehension. It operated on multiple dimensional planes simultaneously, making traditional military strategies largely ineffective. The entity had demonstrated its ability to manipulate space-time fabric, creating defensive barriers that conventional weapons couldn't penetrate. How could humanity overcome an enemy that existed partially outside their realm of understanding? Intelligence gathered from previous encounters revealed a critical vulnerability in the Spectre's neural network. The consciousness, while immensely powerful, required specific electromagnetic frequencies to maintain its cohesion across dimensions. This discovery led to the development of the resonance disruptor, a device designed to interfere with these frequencies. The challenge lay in delivering the device close enough to the consciousness while surviving its formidable defenses. The assault team, comprised of the most experienced survivors of the Long War, approached the Nexus through underground tunnels. These passages, originally part of an ancient transportation network, provided some shielding from the Spectre's sensory capabilities. The team carried modified versions of the quantum shields that had proven effective in previous encounters, but their power supplies would last only 30 minutes at maximum output. As they neared the central chamber, the air itself seemed to vibrate with otherworldly energy. The Spectre consciousness had created a defensive matrix that distorted local physics, making movement increasingly difficult. The team's quantum physicists monitored their instruments, searching for patterns in the distortions that might reveal a path forward. What they found challenged their fundamental understanding of reality itself. The consciousness had constructed its defenses in layers, each operating according to different physical laws. The outer layer bent light in impossible ways, creating visual distortions that made targeting extremely difficult. The middle layer affected gravity locally, requiring the team to compensate constantly for shifting forces. The inner layer, most dangerous of all, disrupted the very fabric of space-time, creating micro-temporal anomalies that could age a person years and seconds. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The team's analysis of DARE's recent encounter revealed that the quantum shields, when modulated to specific frequencies, could create temporary windows in the Spectre's defenses. These windows lasted only fractions of a second, but they provided enough time for precisely targeted attacks. The question remained, could they coordinate their efforts perfectly enough to exploit these momentary weaknesses? The consciousness, sensing the threat, launched waves of energy that manifested as crystalline structures in real space. These structures acted as both weapons and sensors, attempting to isolate and eliminate the human forces. The team's advance slowed to a methodical pace, each step requiring careful calculation and timing. The air crackled with potential energy as both sides engaged in this multi-dimensional chess match. The resonance disruptor required 3 simultaneous breach points to create a containment field around the consciousness. This meant splitting the already small team into 3 groups, each needing to reach specific coordinates while maintaining precise timing. The margin for error was microscopic. A delay of even milliseconds could result in failure and certain death for the entire team. The consciousness began to respond more aggressively as it recognized the humans' strategy. It generated quantum duplicates of fallen soldiers using humanity's own memories against them. These duplicates fought with perfect efficiency, lacking the hesitation or fatigue that affected their living counterparts. How could the team overcome opponents that knew their tactics as well as they did? The battle evolved into a complex dance of position and timing. Each team maneuvered through the shifting dimensional landscape, using the quantum shields to create momentary advantages. The consciousness, for all its power, couldn't focus on all 3 groups simultaneously without weakening its overall defense matrix. This limitation became increasingly apparent as the teams approached their designated positions. The air grew thick with electromagnetic interference as the teams reached their final positions. The consciousness, perhaps recognizing the true threat, for the first time, attempted to collapse the entire pocket of space-time around itself. This desperate move created a cascading series of reality distortions that threatened to tear apart the fabric of local space. The teams had mere moments to activate their devices before the collapse would reach critical levels. The success or failure of the mission now rested on perfect synchronization. The resonance disruptors needed to activate in precise sequence to establish the containment field. Would the teams be able to maintain their positions and timing in the face of reality itself breaking down around them? The fate of humanity hung in the balance as they prepared for the final sequence. The defeat of Spectre marked not just the end of a mission, but the beginning of a complex period of recovery and reflection for the squad. In the immediate hours following the confrontation, medical teams swarmed the facility, treating both civilian survivors and wounded operatives. The air remained thick with tension despite their victory, as the true cost of their success began to materialize in stark detail. Statistical reports flooded in from various sectors, painting a sobering picture of the operation's toll. Civilian casualties numbered in the dozens, with hundreds more requiring medical attention. Infrastructure damage reached unprecedented levels, affecting multiple city blocks and critical facilities. The financial impact alone would take years to fully assess, raising questions about how society would recover from such a devastating event. The squad members themselves faced their own battles in the aftermath. Physical injuries ranged from minor cuts to severe trauma, requiring immediate medical intervention. The psychological impact, however, proved far more challenging to address. Combat stress reactions manifested differently among team members, with some experiencing immediate symptoms, while others showed delayed responses to the traumatic events they had endured. Medical professionals worked tirelessly to establish a comprehensive treatment protocol for both physical and psychological recovery. The unique nature of the squad's enhanced abilities complicated traditional medical procedures, requiring specialized approaches to healing and rehabilitation. This challenge extended to mental health support, as conventional therapy methods needed adaptation to address the extraordinary circumstances the squad had faced. Debriefing sessions revealed the complexity of their shared experience. Each team member provided crucial pieces of information that, when combined, helped authorities understand the full scope of Spectre's operation. These sessions served dual purposes: gathering intelligence and providing an outlet for processing. Traumatic events. How would these revelations shape future operations and protocols? The investigation into Spectre's network continued with renewed vigor. Evidence gathered from the final confrontation site provided valuable insights into their organization's structure and reach. Intelligence agencies worldwide began the painstaking process of identifying and neutralizing remaining cells, preventing any possibility of the network's resurgence. The question remained: how deep did Spectre's influence truly extend? Public reaction to the events varied widely, creating new challenges for both the squad and authorities. While many celebrated the victory, others expressed concern about the collateral damage and the implications of enhanced individuals operating within society. Media coverage ranged from heroic praise to critical analysis, sparking debates about accountability and oversight. The incident prompted discussions about the future role of enhanced operatives in law enforcement and national security. Government agencies initiated reviews of existing protocols and regulations regarding enhanced individuals. The unprecedented nature of the conflict with Spectre exposed gaps in current frameworks, necessitating comprehensive policy revisions. Legislators and security experts began drafting new guidelines that would balance public safety with the unique capabilities of enhanced operatives. What would these changes mean for future operations? The cleanup operation proved equally challenging, requiring coordination between multiple agencies and departments. Environmental concerns arose from the damage sustained during the conflict, prompting extensive testing and monitoring of affected areas. Urban planning experts began developing reconstruction strategies that would incorporate enhanced security measures while maintaining civilian accessibility. The scale of restoration required innovative solutions and unprecedented cooperation between public and private sectors. Personal relationships within the squad evolved in unexpected ways following the mission's conclusion. Shared trauma created new bonds while testing existing ones. Team dynamics shifted as members processed their experiences differently, leading to both strengthened connections and occasional tensions. Support systems developed organically, with squad members relying on each other's understanding of their unique situation. Administrative changes followed in the wake of the operation's conclusion. Leadership structures underwent review and modification based on lessons learned during the conflict. New training protocols were developed, incorporating insights gained from the confrontation with Spectre. How would these changes affect future team operations and effectiveness? The aftermath extended beyond immediate recovery efforts, touching aspects of society that initially seemed unrelated to the conflict. Educational institutions began incorporating new security measures and emergency response protocols. Private sector organizations reassessed their vulnerability to enhanced threats. The ripple effects of the confrontation continued to influence policy decisions and social attitudes toward enhanced individuals. Recovery efforts highlighted the resilience of both the squad and the broader community. Despite the challenges faced, progress emerged through collaborative efforts and innovative solutions. The experience, while traumatic, provided valuable lessons for future crisis management and response strategies. What long-term changes would this event catalyze in society's approach to enhanced operations and public safety? Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.